Hey everybody, Dr. J at Breathe Modern Dentistry, and I want to take a second to tell you do not get braces, and in relationship to that, why you don't want just braces. Let's go into my story. Let me explain to you a little bit about why my face is so messed up. Now I know you're thinking you're a pretty good looking guy, I appreciate that. Altogether though, there are a lot of fundamental problems with my face and my neck that I'd like to go into, because it wasn't just related to getting braces, but it was the reason that I in fact got braces back at the age of 22. So I'm gonna dive in and just explain some of my symptoms and what I'm going to do in order to fix that, and what I wish I would have done when I was 22, and how I wish I could have resolved this if I could go back in time. So if I showed you some pictures of my face real quick, which I'm throwing up on the screen here, you're gonna notice in one of these pictures that one, my eye's a little bit lower on one side than the other. My chin actually does tend to lean over to another side. And if you look at the second picture that I'm putting up on the screen, you're gonna see that my posture is horrible. If you look at where my ear is compared to where my chin is, and you follow that blue line, you're gonna see that my head is way in front of my shoulders, and that gives me neck pain and back pain all the time. My posture's always been terrible, I just never really knew why. Also, if you look at the front of my face, you're gonna notice from the side that my cheeks are very flat. If you follow a line from my eye down towards the head of my cheek here, you're gonna see that's pretty flat. And in comparison to where my nose is, those two should be parallel, and you're gonna see that my nose is quite angled compared to my cheek. So what exactly happened to me? Well, that was a question that I was asking for a while, until I was fortunate enough to be blessed by a colleague of mine to tell me about the Facial Beauty Institute and why all this stuff happens in the first place. So let me just backtrack until I was, I don't know, 6 to 10 years old. Sometime in that time frame, I began breathing more through my mouth than my nose. When you breathe through your mouth, things begin to change violently. As an orthodontist had proven back in 1981, and proved by writing an article up in the Journal of Orthodontics, when he took a group of apes and actually plugged their nose and watched them grow and change as compared to a group that he didn't actually mess with, he noticed a vast change in the length of their face, the malocclusion, or I should say the way the teeth came together improperly, and that many things had changed for the worse when he plugged their nose. When we don't breathe through our nose correctly, our tongue ends up changing position, and for many of us it means that it's not in the roof of our mouth, broadening the arch of our maxilla. In my case, that's exactly what happened, and my teeth began to narrow and my arch became smaller. As a result, my lower jaw also began to narrow down, and I ended up with this longer face. Now, if you look at my mom or my dad, you're gonna find they don't have a longer face like mine, but mine's part of an evolvement of how I grew, not necessarily my genetic coding per se. So fast forward to the future. I ended up at 22 years old in college. My wife, who was my girlfriend then, I love you babe, paid for my braces because she knew that I was just not confident in the way I looked when I smiled back at myself in the mirror. And so after a 3.5-year stint with braces, having teeth removed on the top and bottom in order to make space for where I didn't have space for all my teeth, I finally had the smile that I wanted. But 12 years later, I ended up having many issues, and what I'll tell you is where my posture is related to my airway. In order for me to breathe correctly, I have to have my head tipped forward. Now, if you want to see what my head looks like in a good posture, it's that. And it's not very comfortable, and it doesn't sound good when I breathe. However, if I want to just breathe better, I tip my head forward and great. I can breathe again. The problem is my neck and my back. Man, they suffer a lot from having to hold this 10-pound bowling ball ahead of my body rather than on top of my body. So that's one problem I've been suffering from for years. Secondly, I've been waking up with a lot of tension in my joints, specifically in my masseter muscle here and in my temporalis. I can tell when I wake up in the mornings, I have been just clenching, and it's not been comfortable and getting worse for years and years and years. Thirdly, cosmetically, I've noticed that over time, I'm gonna take my splint out for a second, that's helping my joint. You're gonna notice my teeth have disappeared on the bottom. Right, they're hidden. I've got a very deep bite. And that hasn't helped because over time my bite has deepened and deepened and deepened and put a lot of stress on my joints. And ultimately, the question would be, why did this all happen? What could have been done differently? Well, if I could go back in time, I can tell you a couple of things. One, I wish I would have known, or I wish the science of orthotropics would have been available back then. Orthotropics is not a new science. However, it's an understanding that the position and posture of our mouth, our teeth, and our tongue have a significant impact on the balance of our face as well as the whole health of our body, including our neck, our airway, our joints, stability long-term, on and on and on. And so if I could go back, as a kid, I would have said, stop breathing through your mouth and start breathing through your nose, Smith. Close your lips together. Breathe this way all the time, and that would have likely helped me out tremendously. However, at the age of 22, not having known that, I wish now that I wouldn't have just gotten braces, because stability has been compromised and the structural issues that caused me to have crowding in the first place, they're still there, guys. And ultimately, it's come down to the fact that my maxilla and my mandible, my upper and lower jaw, they didn't grow to their fullest extent forward. And by that, my tongue is now positioned further back in my throat, which is leading me to snore at the age of 35, and I'm a relatively fit guy. And I've seen many friends, many family members who now have CPAPs or suffering from sleep apnea, even though they're not treating it, and the same issue is underlying those reasons. They had a predisposed natural tendency to smaller airway because their tongue is further back in their throat because their jaws did not grow forward. They stayed smaller. They compensated for the crowding with braces, which made the house look nice on the outside, but the structural issue of the house on the inside is still a problem. So if I can just give you a couple of tips. One, if your kids are growing up and breathing through their mouth, make sure they stop. Have them breathe through their nose, and if you can find the reason that they're breathing through their mouth, such as large adenoids or allergies, try and address that before it becomes more of a problem. Secondly, I would have gotten treatment earlier in life. I wish now I could go back between the ages of 6 and 10 and compensated for the changes in growth that I can already see in my old photos at that age. Would have been way easier. But thirdly, I wish now I wouldn't have had extractions of my upper and lower premolars in order to make my teeth straight. It made it look cosmetically a little nicer, but man, it sacrificed so many things for the health of my overall upper neck and posture here that I'm suffering from now. It took 12 years for them to really begin to show. But now I've got to go all the way back through treatment, and I'm on a 2-year plan in order to stabilize my joints, correct for the facial growth that I lacked, and then once again go through braces in order to correct for those spaces. So when I say don't get braces, I mean don't get braces until you know the underlying issue that caused you to have crowding or need braces in the first place. At Breathe Modern Dentistry, we focus on that. We want to make sure that you have beautiful teeth. That's always the outcome that we're going to get. But ultimately, we need to do 2 other things, and that's one, we need to look at the whole health. Is your airway open? Are your joints stable? Are you going to be painless for the rest of your life? And then 2, what about the face? What about the balance of the face? Again, look at mine, look in the pictures. You're going to notice that my facial profile is not what it should be. My cheeks should be fuller. My maxilla should have grown bigger. And if I had grown correctly, my posture would have been easier for me to continue to keep straight, because my neck would not have such a hard time going backwards because my airway starts to close off when I do that. So when we look at a whole health and we look at a balanced face, we're looking to ensure long-term stability, not just including straight teeth. Guys, braces is a wonderful thing. We do a lot of braces here for our patients, but always in mindset that there are bigger things to focus on, and if those things aren't corrected for, then the stability of anything that I do for you is likely not going to stick around. In fact, it'll be compromised to a point where it may be 10, 15, 12, 13 years later, like myself, before symptoms begin to show up. But guess what? Many a times it becomes pain, it becomes sleeping issues, and it becomes relapse of the teeth and smile that often give it away before anything else. But those are just simply consequences of not addressing the structural issue that started it all from the beginning. Don't get braces until you know what it is we need braces to correct. And in that case, at Breathe Modern Dentistry, we'd be happy to help do a full assessment to ensure that we're looking at the whole head and neck, that we're looking at the teeth and the posture of the mouth, not just the way it appears when you smile. That is probably the ultimate cover-up, and braces have been doing that for years and years and years. There's more to braces than that. Let us show you how, and we'll see you then.